Throw hand!
Thank you guys, hello and welcome back everyone to Rohan's Corner, the show! And this week on Rohan's Corner I am doing part 2 of the best Transformers on-screen deaths. So a couple of weeks ago I talked about my favourite on-screen deaths for Transformers Generation 1 characters, and this week in part 2 I'm going to be focusing on those characters from Beast Wars, Armada, Energon and Cybertron. And there were some pretty epic deaths in all of those shows. Specifically Beast Wars, I think, was the first show which had deaths throughout the actual series itself. There weren't too many in Generation 1, pretty much all coming in the movie. Beast Wars really pushed the boat out in terms of the storyline in many ways, and also introduced the protoform idea. But some of the best deaths in Beast Wars were, for me, Dinobots' death, the most heroic death probably ever depicted on Transformers in any way, shape or form, giving his life, or his spark if you will, to save those prehistoric human beings. Or the way in which he fought out against the Predacons was sort of like 4, 5, 6 to 1 at one stage, fighting them all in sort of like a gauntlet style attack through the forest and trying to save all of the surrounding area as well. He just absolutely gave his all, and you could really see that passion and that come through in the way in which the video was shot in that scene, even though it was CGI. And it really gave a lot of emotion, and it still does to me whenever I watch that scene. It still gives a lot of emotion, and I think a lot of people feel the same way about Dinobot's death. And it was suited as well, actually. It was kind of cool that they gave him a good send-off, hero's end, if you like. The way in which he described it throughout the series is what he would have wanted. The second Beast Wars character I want to mention for death, and this is a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't watched Beast Wars, mute out the next 30 seconds, but realistically you should have all watched it now. It's been several decades. The second one is Beast Wars Ravage, and if you don't know, Beast Wars Ravage is actually a Generation 1 reincarnation of Ravage in an updated Beast Wars form. They see what happens to him. He's just about to attack the Maximals in his shuttle ship, and as he's doing so, Rat Trap comes in and throws a load of bombs in there and absolutely obliterates the ship. It's probably one of the best scenes I've ever seen of in Transformers, where a whole ship is taken out, especially Rat Trap being the demolitions expert with those little fancy bombs that he used, which you see the fireball rush through the ship, and Ravage is just engulfed, and it's pretty epic. I really enjoyed that scene. Moving on to Armada, and there were two key characters for me in Transformers Armada who had huge on-screen deaths. This series was nothing like Beast Wars in the sense that it was aimed far more at a younger audience, and so there wasn't really an expectation from me and many other people that there would be any deaths in this series, because it was very kid-focused, kid-centric, and one of the big shocks to me was when Smokescreen was shot, almost or sniper rifle shot through the heart almost, and taken out in a battle, and it was pretty gory, for a kiddie kind of way in which they did it. And so he absolutely got torn apart, and Red Alert's looking at him and saying his body's not salvageable, and actually they managed to rebuild him into Hoist. And this is a bit controversial because technically Smokescreen, he's dead, but then he's rebuilt as Hoist, and he's got the same voice actor. So is he the same character? I mean, I talked about how Megatron dies but is actually rebuilt into Galvatron, and therefore isn't really the same character, but it isn't really a death. And so this one's a bit controversial. I personally think that the Smokescreen character died there because If anybody asked you to name the best death in Armada, everyone would probably say the same thing. This character had a polarizing effect on the show. Not really sure where he fit in, always getting beaten up by Megatron, always trying to flip between Autobots, Decepticons, and Minicons, and fighting his own battle as always. And it is none other than, of course, Starscream. And ultimately, he sort of sacrifices himself trying to take out Unicron, I think it was, which is pretty silly when you think about it, but he didn't know any better, and he's giving his all, a bit Dinobot-like from Beast Wars, but in a lot less of a winning situation, and so he fires everything he's got at Unicron, and ultimately he's just absolutely wiped out by it and disintegrated. And it's kind of sad in a way, because some of the kids and also some of the audience probably had some sort of affinity with Starscream. I've only got one each for Energon and Cybertron, but one character who they brought back, which was quite cool, was Shock Blast, and he was obviously monikered on the original Generation 1 Shockwave, but a lot more sort of conniving and skulky, a bit like Tarantulas in many ways from Beast Wars. He quite enjoyed watching him and his sort of scheming methodologies, but ultimately his death was again one of those sort of significant big moments in the show where there's a huge blast coming down from Unicron, and he just absolutely crushes Shock Blast. And you see, as they depict on the screen, how he dies, his eyeball and it going dark, and it's just epic. The way which they drew it was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that. The second one from Cybertron is one I've mentioned before on the show, and I've shown little clippets of it, is Vector Prime. And the reason why I chose Vector Prime was because, he's a heartfelt character. He's a very loyal and nostalgic kind of character in a way, because, he's one of the original 13 Primes. He's got that ability to time travel. He's trying to save the universe in essence. And he's very noble. And, the way in which he sacrificed himself to be able to help everyone to fight the impending doom from this black hole was really, really key. And then they had a sort of a scene at the end there, reminiscent of Dark Awakening, where they gave him that kind of send-off with the ships in space. And so those were my best on-screen deaths part 2. There will be a part 3 coming up with some more characters. Can you guess who they are? Did you think I should have had any others from the Unicron trilogies or from Beast Wars? Let us know and tell us who are your favorites. Other than that, it's been Rohan from Rohan's Corner for another week. Thank you for joining. Back to the studio.
Hey boys, we've been rumbled. Well, let's bounce.